family, your business, and even your community. Today, against the backdrop of global economic uncertainty, rising domestic pressures, and an urgent call for transformation, the Minister of Finance, Devendranath Thankoo, outlined the government's fiscal roadmap for 2026. The theme was Trinidad and Tobago, building economic fairness through accountable fiscal policies. But behind the numbers lie the real stories, from the cost of food and fuel to youth opportunities, crime solutions, private sector incentives, and Tobago's development agenda. We'll be joined by a powerful and a diverse panel, including leading economists, experts in national security, food security, the business community. We've got health professionals and voices from Tobago, even hearing from the artificial intelligence and innovation sectors. Does this budget truly recalibrate the economy, or is it more of the same? Are we building a future that's inclusive, sustainable, and secure? Well, stay with me as we bring clarity, insight, and analysis to the choices made today and the impact they may have tomorrow. So let's begin. I'll be joined by Dr. Valmiki Arjun, economist and vice president of the Shikona's Chamber of Commerce. We have Dr. Ronald Ramkisoon, also an economist and chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission, and Dr. Gavin Hira, strategic security consultant and former executive director of Trinidad and Tobago's National Operations Center. This evening, gentlemen, welcome to TTT. I would like to hear from each of you, not so much on what your overall impressions are of this year's budget, but if you had to summarize the theme of this budget, the overarching theme, what it means really in one word or even a phrase, what would that be for each of you? Anyone can start?
Yeah. Two words, not just one. Balanced and innovative. And when I say balanced, I don't mean that revenues were equal to expenditure. We know we're still in a deficit. But it was balanced in the sense that it was very fair. What we find in TNT, as economists especially, and even I'm sure the average guy on the street can relate to it, there's a significant amount of inequity in the distribution of income and wealth in the country. Many persons cannot cope with the sheer size of the cost of living especially over the past decade. We've seen fuel prices going up. We've seen, since 2016, the removal of VAT on hundreds, if not thousands, of food items. The cost of shipping would have skyrocketed, which compounded the price of food as well, medications, etc. Also, not to mention, the pandemic would have increased these costs further. The Russia-Ukraine war compounded it as well. Even when prices internationally went back down, locally, they continue to remain high. Food prices, for example, went up by about 48% in the last decade. So I think it's very welcome in the sense that this budget actually tried to reduce a bit some of the inequity by looking to drop the cost of living, which would impact certainly the more lower and middle income householders the most. So, for example, the VAT on many food items, the minister did. He just gave a brief example, but I suspect over the next few days we would find out the entire list of the items that the food items in particular that they're removing the VAT on. In addition to this, they dropped the fuel prices, especially on super. Super is by far the most widely used fuel in the country by everyone across the board, no matter the income bracket then that they fall in. But again, it's going to impact and to help to assist the lower middle class and even the poorer segments of the population the most, allowing them both measures, the reduction and the removal, of VAT, and the drop in the fuel price is certainly going to help them to not just to reduce their costs of living, but when that happens, they save more. They have more of their disposable income to spend on other avenues, perhaps even to be able to buy, to purchase more food items, to save in the bank or make whatever other investments they may want, invest more in education, and the list goes on and on. At the same time, however, the budget also gave it also prioritized rather certain of the wealthier segments, the wealthier sectors of the economy, ensuring that they contribute more towards the fiscal or the financial then state of the economy in terms of the financial sector, the banking industry and the insurance industry in particular, and a very highly unregulated real estate and rental market, in that now they have a surcharge and a levy that they both have to pay, which is going to help plug the leakages in tax revenue in the country, bump up the amount of tax revenue that we need to help close the fiscal gap, and at the same time also help to regularize the rental market.
All right, so Dr. Arjun, you're already hitting things pretty heavy, even though we just wanted a simple 2 words or even a phrase, but we do appreciate that very much. Dr. Ramkissoon, I want to get you in there. How would you summarize this budget if you had to in 1 word or a phrase?
Well, I would use less words than my good friend here. I have to simply say a shift in emphasis, and maybe even philosophy. And we could take that up
A little bit further.
a little bit, unless you want to do
Let's
that
hear
now.
it. A shift in emphasis and philosophy. I definitely want to hear a little bit more about that. I mean, we're hearing about balance and equity, and now let's hear your take.
Yes, I see certain measures that are focusing on lower income groups, on labor in particular, and increased taxes on businesses, on landlords. It suggests the measures announced together seem to suggest that there is going to be a greater emphasis on the lower income groups in the society. Now, let's say that is positive. However, very importantly, in any attempt to do that, one has to calibrate, to use the word, how is this going to be financed in a sustainable manner. And then one has to get behind the figures and to see when the revenue measures are implemented, what are the effects on businesses? Are they going to continue to behave or do what they have been doing in the past? Or are they going to change in the direction in which you would like them to change? Or are the measures going to lead in a reduction in investment, for example, which when it is all balanced or put together, one is not too sure. You hope for the best, but one has to spend some time thinking about the pluses and minuses and to get a feel for how they turn out at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, as we go along. And I think the revenue measures, we need to look close at them and we need to get behind them.
So Dr. Ramkissoon, they're talking a little bit about taking some time to really figure it out. And Dr. Hira, you've been given a little bit of time to think about your response to this question. Summarize it for me.
Well, before I answer, I was impressed and entertained by my fellow panelists based on their approach. So I'm going to give you 2 words. And the 2 words are hope and accountability. My phrase, security drives strategy. And I'll take it from there as we go on with the conversation.
All right. So we're looking at recalibrating the economy. What exactly does that mean to you in concrete terms? And I know many people right now are asking, where are they going to get the money to do this?
Yes.
What does that look like, recalibrating the economy? Tell me more. Dr. Hira?
Of course. So recalibrating the economy means that, you know what, we're going to look at this, we're going to readjust, shifting, good word, and even some of the key identifications that Dr. Arjun recognized. But more importantly, recalibrating is that we are hoping to do things differently. We are going to look and see how we are going to progress with this and what are some of the projections. Now, it is key when I use the phrase security drives a strategy, we tend to look at security in the aspect of, you know what, national security, homeland security, a 3-ministry coverage now. But security is the mindset. Security is how we do business. Security is our livelihood. Security is our vigilance. And therefore, that vigilance ties into the due diligence, which is related to the security. So it's not only national security, but security as a nation. And that is why I'm saying the recalibrating of the economy also addresses our ability as a country, our ability now as the what I like to say, the employers of the state is holding the government accountable in the expectation that you will deliver as they recalibrate the economy, as we make things a lot more easier in how we do stuff. The introduction of, for instance, like the landlord surcharge and all of those things, the dropping of the gasoline, good. But to recalibrate would mean how do we adjust this now for the short, medium, and long-term projections for the survivability of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, and you mentioned Dr. Arjun in there. I want to bring you back, Dr. Arjun. Has the government really struck the right balance between economic growth and social development? Is this really a budget for everyone in living up to their manifesto as well?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, you talk about economic growth, right? And remember, this is a new administration, you know, as people are saying widely, and it is very true, it's early days yet. The budget has now been presented today. In my view, it is a highly respectable budget, and especially given that it has changed the narrative that we've been hearing for quite a while. It's looking to, in my view, it's more expansionary as opposed to simply raising taxes and slashing expenditure just simply to make the numbers look good. That is not the focus. The focus appears to be more on, as my colleagues would have mentioned, more emphasis then on the lower income brackets, the more vulnerable as well persons, and at the same time trying to use some innovative ways. Recalibrate then how we do things, and what I would like to emphasize is how we are financing some of these initiatives or our expenditure rather in the budget. You would have heard obviously the minister indicated the deficit, which is much projected to be much smaller to where it was over the last 2 fiscal years. The fiscal year we just came out of, that deficit is just under $9 billion. The deficit before that was somewhere just over $9 billion. I think it was $9.11 billion, if I'm not mistaken. But now this deficit is projected to be just under $4 billion. So that is if we really achieve that, and I can't see at this particular stage why we would not. I want to be confident that we can keep that narrow deficit, if not narrow it even further down the road. He's now looking at new innovative ways of financing. One of them is a real estate investment trust. That is the first in Trinidad and Tobago. What that is you take several properties then that the state would own, carefully selected properties. They could be income generating, like hotels, for example, or not income generating at this particular stage, but with the potential to be income generating, like land. You have other examples. You have office buildings. It could be commercial properties, and the list goes on. You take these properties and you transfer it into a particular special purpose vehicle or a trust known as a real estate investment trust. At the same time, the public, be it ordinary investors, ordinary citizens, or institutions, will be invited to purchase shares or units in that trust. So when they buy these shares, these units, the monies that are raised then is then used by the government to spend on their budgetary obligations. And as we would have seen with several investment opportunities that the state would have provided in the last several years, be it the National Investment Fund bonds, the 2 tranches that we would have seen. We would have seen in the first incarnation of the Kamala Prasad-Bissessar government back in 2010 to 2015. There were 2 IPOs, TTNGL and also FCB. There's a very high investment appetite in the country. All of these investment opportunities were oversubscribed. So if it is marketed very well and the benefits are shown to be, the benefits are marketed to the general public, I see no reason why even this real estate investment trust will also not, I see no reason that it will not be oversubscribed as well, providing the government with non-debt financing to meet some of their obligations. And I think it needs to be stressed. This is non-debt financing. And how will the people benefit? They will benefit because now they have something to to add to their stock of wealth, as in terms of shares or units in this real estate investment trust. They would benefit from dividends being paid by the real estate investment trust over time. How is the trust going to earn this money? Simple. The properties there are income generating, for example, hotels. So the income you get from that, you use some of it to pay as dividends to the individuals, the investors that have invested in the trust. And of course, they would benefit over time from the price appreciation when the prices go up in these stocks or units that they're holding. So it's an all-around benefit. The state gets capital, they get money to spend on their budgetary obligations, but it's not debt that they have to repay. And citizens benefit because it is yet another investment vehicle for them.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Arjun. Now, Dr. Ramkisud, I'm looking at your expressions while Dr. Arjun is talking. Is this something that you're agreeing with? Because, I mean, one of the big things that would have come out of that budget presentation today that many people seem to care a lot about is the fact that the gas price, especially when it comes to super, would have gone down by $1. And that's something a lot of people seem to be happy about. So let's talk a little bit more about that. We've seen the removal of motor vehicle tax concessions. We've seen a lot of VAT reductions. We have seen some tax concessions coming in for different sectors. Tell me, are you feeling that same positivity, that same feeling from your colleague here that this is all benefiting us?
Well, let me put it this way. I use super in my motor car, and I feel very good about that measure, that particular measure. Let me say this is a measure. The idea was introduced by the former finance minister, and we ought to have had this arrangement where when the price of international energy prices are high, then our price at the pump would be higher. But when they fall, like they are doing now, then we would have had cheaper prices. So this is a measure that should have been instituted long before today. I think I would give the Minister of Finance credit for introducing that particular measure, especially where the subsidy that he would have to pay would in fact be lower than what it would have otherwise have been. So I think it was a smart initiative which should have been done some time ago. And I also want to make the point that there are several things to be said. One, the deficit of just under $4 billion, I think is pretty small given where it was heading at $10 billion. Of course, as an economist, I am pleased that that is the intention, because we have had too many deficits in this economy and viewed by international agencies for us not to be heading into lower deficits and a balanced budget. So it's good to see that that is where the minister's mind might be. However, I don't know that the expenditures are going to be as low as he seemed to suggest. Neither are the revenues going to be as high as he suggests. So my expectation is that we are going to have a larger deficit. However, he will do well to keep it under $10 billion.
But we have had previous budgets where it was over 10.
Oh,
correct?
yes. Well, yes, in the past. I'm saying given where the expectation, the actual prices of energy are now, and I think he used somewhat higher prices than I would have used in terms of both the gas and oil. However, be that as it may, so that is one issue. But in any case, there are projections and it is forecasts, and we don't know really how this is all going to end up come later in the year. I also want to make the point that one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest, that we are all aware of is indeed the shortage of foreign exchange. And the measures for social support, which in themselves are positive, like the increase in salaries, the 10% and so on, which was promised and so on, they imply greater expenditures, not foreign exchange earning in the short term. And I think the challenge really is in the short term. What is going to happen to the stock of foreign exchange in the short term? Are we going to have further hemorrhaging? There are initiatives in the budget which have the potential of generating additional foreign exchange in the medium to long term, in the case of energy, to the extent that we find oil and gas in the deep water, etc. So those are, let me also say, what are the impacts, what are likely to be the impacts on prices? And I think the measures taken to tax the business community are likely to translate into higher prices. I would hope that businesses would seek to cushion some of those potential increases. I'm not so sure. We are in a market economy where businesses are entitled to charge whatever the market allows. And therefore, I see some increase in the inflation rate and in prices down the road. Let me make one correction. I am the former chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission. I'm no longer the chairman, so.
Thank you for that correction.
Very important correction there.
And while we're on that point, we want to switch to, we're going back to that foreign use vehicle imports. Government has, in fact, announced plans to ease restrictions on foreign use vehicle imports, which aims to make car ownership more affordable for citizens. Sonalala is telling us more in this report.
Finance Minister Devendranath Tanku said the current government intends to reverse what he described as restrictive policies imposed by the previous administration, which he said contributed to rising vehicle costs.
An increase in the permissible age of importation of private cars, that is SUVs, sedans and station wagons, which are powered by gasoline, diesel or CNG, from 3 years and under to 6 years and under from the date of Secondly, an increase in the permissible age of importation of light commercial vehicles, that is pickups and panel vans, from 7 years and under to 10 years and under from the date of.
He said this measure will take effect from January 1st, 2026. Meanwhile, the finance minister also announced new duties and tax on high-end electric vehicle imports, pointing out that significant foreign exchange had been used to import luxury electric vehicles that currently attract no custom duties.
I propose the following on vehicles whose CIF values exceeds $400,000, Mr. Speaker. A rate of duty of 10%, VAT of 12.5%, and a tiered rate of motor vehicle tax applicable to the electric motor size will be applied on vehicles whose CIF value exceeds $400,000. At the current demand, this initiative will contribute an additional $40 million to revenues.
He said this measure also takes effect on January 1st, 2026. Sonolala, TTT News.
So while the presentation was going on there, I'm hearing comments from our panel. Expected. You anticipated this would happen. It was all part of their manifesto. So nothing new happening here, correct? Dr. Arju?
Yeah, it was widely touted during the election period that they were looking to increase the age limit for the importation of foreign use vehicles from 3 years to 6 years, and the minister would have, as he put it, kept the promise. What this is likely to do is drop the overall cost of importing vehicles. In fact, what we would have seen in the last couple of years is certain foreign use dealers having no problems accessing foreign exchange in order to import foreign use vehicles. More so some of the larger ones compared to the smaller ones, but many of them were not getting that much problems with respect to access to the foreign exchange. And that's quite likely because the financing terms. You remember, many of them have arrangements with the commercial banks to be able to get financing, so that the clientele, the customers, can import these vehicles easily, and that is a way for the commercial banks to increase their returns, their profits. Remember, at the end of the day, the commercial bank's main objective is to maximize shareholder wealth, profits.
Right.
So at this particular juncture, when the policy is implemented, is going to allow for persons now to import vehicles, but given that the age limit has increased, it would afford them the ability to be able to import the cheaper vehicles, which theoretically should mean less usage then, or less demand for the foreign exchange, because you don't need that much foreign exchange to purchase a 6-year-old vehicle as you would need to purchase a 2-year-old vehicle or a 3-year-old vehicle. Of course, depending on the type of vehicle that you're importing at the end of the day. That is one possibility. Another possibility is that, well, what if some people might decide, okay, well, instead of importing a 1-year-old vehicle or a brand new vehicle, maybe I could import two vehicles, a 6-year-old vehicle and a 5-year-old vehicle, which could mean greater demand for foreign exchange for certain segments of the population. I think that is something that we need to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, it is in fact the government keeping one of their key campaign promises, and I do think that for many, especially within the middle income bracket and the lower income bracket as well, it will ease part of their cost burdens and being able to afford a new car.
All right, keeping with campaign promises, this is something I want to bring in Dr. Hira with as well. One of their campaign promises would have been with respect to national security and also policing. We are seeing a modernized push now for police service for the police service and the other entities involved within the budget for allocations, including digital tools. They spoke about drone surveillance, for example, forensic upgrades. Tell me a little bit more in terms of the security allocations and what that signals in terms of the policing sector now being more, is it more reactive to strategic? Tell me more about that.
You see, what we have to understand is that just as the government would be pushing to deliver on the manifesto and on the promises, a key part of it, as I opened with the phrase, security drives strategy. And therefore, the policing aspect of it is not to be seen as the TTPS, but more importantly, law enforcement. And this is inclusive of the intelligence agencies, inclusive of some of the surveillance and all of the various architecture that support not only the police service but national security in a whole. And therefore, this move is a modernization of assuming international best practices as it comes to national security, which is inclusive of homeland security, defense, and of course, justice, right? We must not dismiss on the whole concept of regional security and basically the protection of our borders, and inclusive of that, the tension that we are seeing with our territorial space. What is dismissed sometimes and not taken, what we don't pay attention to, is the morale and the motivation of the men and women of national security. So inclusive of the drone surveillance and all of that, a major focus now that the minister would have come out and presented the people-centered, people-first type of budget. When I use the word hope and accountability, is to see how we can also drive some of that expenditure to the men and women who are putting their lives on the line outside there to ensure that we have a safe and secure Trinidad and Tobago, so that investment, foreign investment, that whole concept of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago and moving us out of this abyss that we've found ourselves in, is also being done in a way where the people that are called to do that are being taken care of. Because these are the same people that have to face the empty shelves, the health issues, the gas pump that is now more comfortable. So it's not only like the drone surveillance and this and that, and then we heard some conversation about new prison infrastructure and all of that. What I am advocating for is that this expenditure must give some emphasis to the men and women of national security, because COVID showed us that without the men, without the human aspect, that human input, infrastructures would shut down. And we have to understand that it is important to invest in the human factor in order to have longevity towards our security that can drive the strategy and, of course, fulfill all of the deliverables that the learned panel had already entertained. There's another aspect to this, and we have to understand that information technology, or known as the technological revolution, is upon us. And we heard about modernization, we heard about digitization. What we have to hear, I haven't heard it yet, I'm not too sure if the panels will guide me on this debate, but cybersecurity with an aspect of protecting that space also comes into play. And that's a big project-focused sort of expenditure, because we are moving a lot of improvement and development and strategies in that new space. And therefore, cybersecurity plays an important role with regard to not only our strategizing, but the security of our strategizing to ensure that we are safer and secured.
And we will be talking a little bit later on about artificial intelligence and innovation. But stay where you are. We do have some reshuffling to do on our panel at the minute, so we're going to head to a quick break. And when we come back, we'll hear more about Dr. Hira on splitting the ministries and more on accountability, as he called it in his opening statements. How does it all move around in terms of the finances? So we'll talk to him shortly about that. Until then, it's time for a quick break. We'll be back with more. Welcome back. So we are having an interesting conversation this evening as we are working toward Budget 2026 here. I am Sigoni Mohammed, and we are now joined. I can say that I have a new panel with me as we are recalibrating not just the economy but also this cast this evening. So with me this evening, I have Philip Edward Alexander. Now, Philip is not just a minister in the Ministry of Housing, but Philip also brings a unique blend of communication expertise. I could also say social activism, that's right, and media insight. So we'll be talking to him in a short bit. We also have joining us this evening Mr. Anselm Richards, the Chief Economic Advisor of the Tobago House of Assembly. Thank you for joining us this evening and representing Tobago. And also this evening, we have President of the Chaguanas Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Baldat Maharaj. Is it Maharaj or Maharaj?
Maharaj.
Maharaj. Thank you so much, Mr. Maharaj, for joining us this evening. So we were just having a very interesting conversation about the budget presentation, what it means to people, and some of the words coming out of that would have been hope, accountability, as well as a very interesting take on a shift in emphasis and philosophy. I'm not sure if you gentlemen share that, but I want to kick things off with Tobago, because Tobago would have gotten a very large portion of the budget for this fiscal year. Tell me, what is your take at this point? I mean, people in Tobago should be, I'm assuming, very happy. Not as much as you all forecast, or just around the realm. I heard earlier your chief secretary saying just about $0.9 million shy of the target you were looking for. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you for having me. Well, we are just 0.9% shy of what we asked for.
Right.
So we had made a request for 5.9% of the national budget, and we were allocated 5%. And that is based basically on the per capita share, because Tobago's population as a share of the national population is 5.1%. So I think based on that, that is where we will say that the budget presents an essence of equity and fairness in the context of Tobago. And it is the first time in the history of the Tobago House Assembly that we have received over 4% of the national budget. What this really means in dollars and cents is that $5 of every projected expenditure for fiscal 2026 will be spent in Tobago out of $100. Out of every $100 projected to be spent by the national government, $5 was given to Tobagonians.
But
so $95 stays in Trinidad. But we'll move on from that as we go along, and the whole resetting and recalibrating of the economy takes place, because I think where we are in terms of our development trajectory, there needs to be a heavier share coming to Tobago to drive the transformation, because Tobago is poised to be the stage for immediate diversification in terms of the tourism sector and to deal with the forex crisis that we are facing. But more will come in the conversation as we go along.
More will come. Mr. Alexander, well, I was given the opportunity to call you Philip earlier.
Absolutely.
So, right. So, Philip, I see you smiling a little bit there as he said 95 will stay in Trinidad. Tell me a little bit more. How do you feel about Tobago's allocation?
You know what? I wanted to say, I was sitting there and I was thinking, this Minister of Finance he was so spot on every time, because I was part of the Senate bench. We were behind the speaker and we were just looking on and listening. And I want to tell you, we were all getting more and more excited with each and every announcement. And when he got to Tobago, I thought, well, this Tobago Carnival is going to be the best Tobago Carnival you'll ever had. Because, and Ashworth Jack was there and he gave me a thumbs up. So I think that we as a nation have to respect, as the Minister of Finance says, we're one country. Tobago is part of this country. Tobago needs to be treated with respect. I heard your Secretary of Finance say that this was about $400 million more than you're accustomed to getting, or that you got last year, or that they were expecting to get. So I think that, from a point of view of development, because Tobago's development is intrinsically linked to Trinidad's development, and I think that the partnership between this Kamla Prasad Bisesa-led government and Tobago is the strongest we've been for a long time. And I am happy for Tobago, and I think Tobagonians are happy. So we won here. And I just wanted to add one thing, because I've been hearing everybody talking about recalibrating. I think that's a fancy word for fixing it. And we're fixing it. That's
In
what the
keeping with
budget
today's
was.
conversation, of course, today's
That's what the
budget
budget
presentation.
was. We're fixing it, and we fixed Tobago. Tobago is happy. We're all happy. Yeah? This wasn't a simple budget. And going in, a lot of people were, I guess, confused. How would he balance it? Because there are a lot of challenges. And wow, it was magic. It was a miracles. I heard the Prime Minister, we had a caucus immediately after. She said they've been working at it for days. Up to 10:30 this morning, they finalized it. And I think they did a marvelous job. And I'm proud of this government, and I'm proud of this budget. I'm looking forward to being able to defend it.
As you're on that point, before I head over to Mr. Maraj, you are a powerful voice online, and I'm sure that you would have been looking at social media and probably hearing what's been happening. People are probably messaging you. What does the voice of Trinidad and Tobago sound like to you right now, given this budget presentation?
I think, well, I'm not there, but I think there must be partying on the avenue and in St. James. I think Trinidad is happy. People have been messaging me. I've been hearing, well, no other party can run for election in this country after this budget. I heard the opposition leader refer to it as we still campaigning, which is a compliment, because a campaign budget is sweeties. Not so? That's what you say, that it's election time and you're giving people plenty. So even the opposition leader agrees that this was a budget that treated everybody fairly, and I think that that's what they set out to do. When you listen to it, when you listen to all of the measures, the one common thread, and I was talking to Minister Swartz, saying he was right in front of me, and I was saying, the common thread is jobs. We're creating jobs, sustainable jobs. The Minister of Finance touched on contract jobs. He said we're going to transform all of them into sustainable, long-term, pensionable jobs. That's what people want. A lot of the things, my contribution to the caucus was, Madam Prime Minister, when we did all of our social media intervention, all of our pre-budget consultations, the feedback we got from the public said, remove the property tax, put it on the people who actually rent in their houses. That's what the government did. The people said, don't raise the electricity rates for the houses and the residential sector first. Put it on the commercial and the industrial sector. They could afford it. That's what the government did. This Prime Minister listens before she acts. And I think that this budget here, all of the consultation that took place before the budget, I think that's what is in this book here. And I think they did a fantastic job.
A book that you are...
I'm holding it. I have pages marked. I want to answer you. Well, I want to answer you with facts. So any question you have, I want to pass you on because I don't.
Because we do want to get the chambers. We do want to get the chambers' perspective in this. So clearly, Tobago is now not being viewed as an administrative afterthought. What is the chamber's view on the allocations, not just for Tobago, but also for Trinidad and Tobago?
I mean, Tobago deserve their fair share of the budget. And as my colleague said, they are 5% of the population. So that seems to be a fair, very, very fair for them. With regards to Trinidad, I think what we got and what we saw in terms of the distribution of wealth, I would say it's more balanced. And there's a level of hope that we have, in the business community. What we were really happy with is that 0.25 of 1% tax that goes to the bank's assets. Now, you will know that the banks collectively, they make billions of dollars every year. They probably make more than every other industry. And it probably is time now that, they pay a fair share of their taxes. And I want to add, too, they would tend to go back and charge it to the customers. And I think it's time that the central bank put some level of regulation to the extent that the spreads that the bank have, which is extremely high, that they have a level of control over that spread. And effectively, when the bank review mortgage rates on an annual basis for existing mortgages. So if we are at that 0.25%, if, for example, the bank should increase mortgage rates by 0.25%, it's quite a lot. So I would want to ask the banks to make sure that when they pay that tax, it is not passed on to the customer.
Okay, so Mr. Richards, actually, I'm seeing you nodding, you're shaking your head when he's talking about the banks need to pay up at this point. What's your thoughts on that? Can you weigh in?
Well, I don't want to say that I have always raised an issue, and I raised it to the last Minister of Finance, that there is definitely a need for a deeper regulation of the spread between the prime interest rate and the prime lending rate, because these banks are making super abnormal profits in this country. And it's really pulling money out of the productive sector and having it stored up in the banks. Because what they're actually doing, they're appropriating profits from the business community. Because when you're paying higher interest rates and super higher interest rate, it means that your profit margin is constricted and you have less capital to reinvest, but you are paying that back into interest into the banking sector. So there really need to be a deeper regulatory oversight of the financial services sector in Trinidad and Tobago, and especially the banking sector.
Well, Philip seems to have already consulted his document here. Yeah. So, Philip, let's get. I see you've already even,
Yes, bookmarked.
Bookmarked the page. What is it that you have to share with us?
No, I couldn't agree more. And this is something that we've fought for a long time. And I want to say to my good friend here that if the banks are sensible, they'd understand that this Prime Minister is not somebody to play with. She's not been unfair. All the banks make billions of dollars. And she's not been unfair. This is a small contribution back to the country. They estimated at $575 million. So it's not a large share of their profits. If they try to pass that on to the customers, I think the Prime Minister, in her own due deliberation, might find it in her best interest to take other action. The banks and every other business in the country needs to understand, and as you rightly said, we are one country and we all need to be contributing to the best interests of Trinidad and Tobago. I found that it was extremely measured. I think that in my personal view, the banks have enacted extortionate fees on the customers. The rates are high. We get practically no interest on our money. I call it money warehousing. We put our money in the bank and they use our money and we don't get nothing, and they make a lot of money and then they charge us fees. They charge you, and it's $40 for a photocopy page. And a lot of that went on unimpeded under the last administration. I think Kamala Persad-Bissessar, the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, saying, listen, we all benefit from being a part of Trinidad and Tobago. We'll all contribute to the development of Trinidad and Tobago. And again, that goes to the spirit of this budget. It's about fairness. And I think that the bankers should get together and say, okay, we had a long run. Let's see what we could do on our own, reduce some of these fees, increase some of the interest paid to the customers, so that the government will see that we're willing. Because during the election and on nomination day, when all the media asked me what I thought the election was about, I said, I believe this election is about money in your pocket. And I think this budget is about money in everybody's pocket. And when you said just now, when people put money in the bank and store it away, it doesn't work. It does nothing. We need $1 moving around and around and around so that people could make money, have opportunities. And those are things that you can't forecast out of this. That you've created an environment here where the average person could be an entrepreneur now. The average person is going to save money. They're going to be able to start business. Everybody has ambition. But it was very tough under the last administration to step out of your crease. I think this government has opened the country wide to development from the lowest to the highest. And I think that we're in a good place going forward from here.
We are in a good place. That's what you're saying. Now, Tobago was given a total figure of $3.724 billion. Tobago seems to be in a good place. But I want to ask you, now that you have the dollar going around and it is there, what are the incentives in this budget for Tobago to really boost its private sector and areas such as ecotourism and looking at the carnival and its creative industries? Tell me more.
So you may recall that the minister mentioned that the Tobago House Assembly have prepared a strategic development pathway, a 20-year strategic development pathway towards making Tobago the greatest sickle island on the planet. And if you go to our budget statement, there are clear focal areas for investment. Tourism is one, agriculture, infrastructure development, digitization, human capital development. So those are some of the core areas. The tourism will embrace our orange economy. So we have a focused development strategy, and the minister found favor with that, and he has provided the resource for us to activate our development strategy in fiscal 2026. Now, the $3.7 billion for Tobago, I think we need to break it out as it is presented in the budget. There is $2.96 billion that is being allocated. That's the 5% that comes directly to the Tobago House of Assembly to treat with the responsibilities of the Tobago House of Assembly to the people of Tobago. And then there's a 700+ million that is projected to be spent by ministries like the Ministry of National Security, Public Utility, Public Utilities, Tech, and other ministries in Tobago, to the completion of the NAR Robinson Airport, because new terminal, because that's a national project that is being executed by the central government. So those are projected expenditure to be spent by other ministries in Tobago, and that takes the projected spend out of the national budget to Tobago to $3.7 billion. So I just want the arithmetic to be clear. So I don't want people to think that Tobago is receiving the $7.3 billion. It is only 2.961 that the THA is receiving. But the expenditure, the overall projected expenditure for Tobago for fiscal 2026 is projected at $3.7 billion. I just wanted to be clear.
And we're glad that you are making it clear for us. If I could bring the Chamber's perspective in on this, we've seen a lot where, and our previous panel kind of alluded to this as well, the taxation strategy that came into place with all of the fiscal measures. Are there any burdens or reliefs worth noting from the Chamber perspective with these taxations?
Well, as it relates to the super gas, for example, it worked in favor. In fact, we had a reduction in the number of middle-class people we had. So what we'll probably see now, with more disposable income coming in, because of reduced expenditure as it relates to importing older vehicles that would probably cost half as much as, let's say, a 2-year vehicle in the industry. So I understand that. And the maintenance, in fact, the regular day-to-day running, going to be a lot less. So that what it does do is it gives the average person some more disposable income, monies that they could then spend on the economy, spend in restaurants, in hospitality, and things like that they would not have spent on before. What's important, though, from a business perspective, is that there's more money circulating, and it's spread around, from the lower income bracket to the middle as well as the higher income.
All right. Interesting that you should say that. So I want to find out from you, because we do have to go to a break shortly. But before we do that, what is the message? Because you hinted to it. What is the message that this budget sends to the average citizen? Is it a message of relief, recovery, or redirection?
It's a message of relief. The expectation from the business community would have been one where there would have been a high deficit budget. We never expected a reduction in super gas, which is what I would say probably 50% of citizens use, especially taxis. So it's a measure of relief. And more than that, the deficit is probably well within the 3% range that's acceptable. And that aside, Dr. Rapkison mentioned it before, we have not gone to that 10 billion or in excess of $9 billion in deficit. So that's interesting. And again, where I started is that it's a budget that's hopeful. The business community is looking forward to see how everything is rolled out. Some of the issues that we didn't hear too much about, and that should probably happen as we go down, the port issues, that has been a major issue for importers. Most businessmen depend on the port. I've not heard too much about that, but I guess in the fullness of time, we'll probably hear, except to say that there was a new crane, I believe, that will be purchased, and that should probably reduce the waiting time for those large vessels.
Okay, and Mr. Richards, tell me.
Well, the budget for Tobago for me is one that presents respect, hope, and a recalibration of the national development approach, recognizing that the development of the Tobago economy is the development of the national economy of Trinidad and Tobago, and a recognition that a country cannot meet its full potential if a significant constituent is not being afforded the opportunity to maximize its full potential, as has happened over the years in the context of Tobago. I think this is a welcome resetting of the development agenda and strategy of the national development agenda of Trinidad and Tobago.
Very sneaky of you there, adding another R into the mix, resetting. So, Mr. Alexander, tell me, is it relief, recovery, redirection, or resetting, other than fix it?
I want to say that the message of this budget is hope. I honestly believe that that's what a lot of people are going to wake up tomorrow to. There's so many people on fixed incomes that to a father who fills his gas tank 4 times for the month just saved $200. That's $200 real dollars in his pocket. And that's what it comes down to, how people could benefit from this. There's the hope of all that's happening, the economic bridge we're building with Grenada, with India, with the United States of America, with China, the United Arab Emirates. And that was one trip she took. I think we need the Prime Minister on a plane every couple of months, because if one trip brought us all of that, you understand? That I think that there is so much hope in this budget that for the average person, because going into the election, the feeling was hopelessness, that there was nothing more that could go wrong. And today there's so much going right. You know, to the average everyday person, I don't want to say it's a poor people budget, but to the everyday person, the removal of VAT on food items again, that's going to reduce your grocery bill, more money in your pocket. That's what the election was fought for. This is the first budget of the Kamla Prasad Bisesa-led coalition of interest government, and it is a spot-on budget to, I'll give you one of your R's, redevelop Trinidad and Tobago to prosperity. This was the way forward. I think she deserves a massive round of applause.
All right, and hopefully you get that round of applause from whatever you are hearing on social media, and it is beneficial to...
They're loving her tonight. They're loving her. They're loving Dave Tanko tonight. They're loving him. I told them, don't go outside without security. They're going to molest you in the street. They're loving him.
Well, as we continue to recalibrate the economy here on TTT, this is the Budget 2026. We will be going to a short break. But when we come back, we find out how this is all impacting food security and agriculture as well. So we'll touch on that shortly, right after this message. It's Dr. Muradali. There we go. Dr. Muradali, can you hear me? Hello,
Hi.
good evening.
Yes, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, Dr. Muradali, just making sure you can hear me clearly.
Crystal clear, and I'm hearing Sunil in the background here talking, so I'm
All
hearing.
right,
Should I
great.
disconnect him?
So we will be bringing
I'm
you in
disconnecting.
shortly.
Yes.
Yep. All right, so stand by. What do we need? Welcome back. This is an interesting evening here in Trinidad and Tobago as we continue our conversation on Budget 2026, recalibrating the economy right here on TTT. We are at the point where we're looking at a particular sector, one that many people look forward to, and in terms of its allocation, the agriculture sector for fiscal 2025-2026 was allocated $1.13 billion. Let's find out what else happened within that sector today.
Minister of Finance Devendranath Tanku unveiled a comprehensive plan to boost the agricultural sector. Speaking during the presentation of the 2026 national budget, the minister highlighted the sector's potential, noting that it currently contributes to less than 1% of the country's GDP, a strategic vulnerability they propose to reduce.
We will align CARICOM's 25 by 25 initiative to reduce food imports by at least 25% by 2030 while promoting agro-exports. A 3-year priority commodities program for 15 high-demand products with annual focus on 3 crops and 1 livestock category. Climate-resilient farming and crop insurance, greenhouse incentives, and farmer and water investing harvesting systems, Mr. Speaker.
He said the government also intends to integrate agriculture into schools and increase exports of local goods.
Integration of agriculture into schools and youth entrepreneurship through Youth Agricultural Fund. Export growth in fine flavor cocoa, Moruga pepper, and aquaculture, doubling agro exports by 2020.
Value-added tax, or VAT, will be removed from agricultural equipment and basic food items like table salt, mobi, coconut water, as well as locally produced pumpkin, watermelon, cucumber, lettuce and tomatoes, amongst others. The minister said $793.7 million will be invested into infrastructure, irrigation, fisheries, land development and agri-tech initiatives. He said smart agriculture and AI farming will increase efficiency and self-sufficiency, targeting $1 billion in exports over the next fiscal year. In the last budget under the previous administration, $1.184 billion was allocated to the agricultural sector. Daniel John, TTT News.
So to help us understand a little bit more about the agriculture sector and its allocation, we're joined by Donnie Rogers, who is the director at Farm Fresh and Nova Dairy, as well as the director of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Rogers, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so you are joined by Mr. Richards, who's representing the THA, and we also have Mr. Alexander, who is here with the complete, don't want to say a manifesto, of course, but the entire budget presentation, the budget presentation, the statement.
I want the facts.
He's making sure that we have all of the facts. In terms of agriculture, we've heard a lot. We have this $1.1 billion allocation. We have the Youth Agri-Homestead program. We have land lease distribution happening here and over $300 million in support from the government. How connected do you feel to this national financial decision when it comes to agriculture?
So again, thank you for having me and good night to everyone. I believe that the prescriptions under the package that was discussed today is very focused and realistic. What we have seen, and in my opinion, being a practitioner in the industry, I believe, and it's very clear, it's abundantly clear that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance listen to the cries of the farmers. And I'll say that very specifically because two things stood out. Actually, we'll go with three because there's a huge infrastructural drive that was announced. Aside from that, VAT was removed from locally produced goods. And what that will do, it wouldn't just drag the price, it wouldn't just make it more affordable, drive the price down. It will increase the demand. In Trinidad, we have been inundated with agricultural imports. We have one of the highest food import bills ever of just about $7.3 billion. And there is a definite need to address that. The statistics that I came up with, and I've made this position publicly very clear, is that if something doesn't happen now, what we would see in a few years is that food production will become so cost prohibitive because the importers will have gained economies of scale. And it will make food production locally cost prohibitive. So the timing is actually perfect. We have seen announcements where VAT was removed from all agricultural equipment and machinery. What that does is that it brings the savings to the farmers immediately and upfront. So a farmer does not have to buy a piece of equipment, apply through the agricultural incentive, wait however long for it. You are discounted immediately. So your capital expenditure to get back into production or to continue production is mitigated and managed, and it's easier now. And that reflects down the road in a lower cost of production.
Now, I must mention as well that we do have joining us via Zoom this evening is Dr. Navi Muradali, who is a specialist in lifestyle medicine, and he's also a former mayor of the city of San Fernando, and he's also the current CEO of Patient Connect. Now, he is joining us on Zoom, and I will bring him into this conversation very shortly because when we talk about agriculture, we look at food security and health, and we're also, trying to get a sense of, with respect to this allocation in agriculture and all of the other fiscal measures that were mentioned in this year's budget, does it address long-standing issues within your sector?
One of the longest-standing issues that farmers had was land tenure. And the sector will be very happy, or is very happy, with regards to the realignment of the ministry, where there's a Ministry of Land and Legal, where specific focus is being placed on land administration and leases and stuff like that. Most of the farmers that we have in Trinidad do not have land tenure, up to 75%. So that means that they cannot get a farmer's badge, they can't be registered, and therefore they cannot access incentives. It is very clear from all that the Prime Minister and the ministers have done that they have listened to these cries whilst in opposition, because they would have had numerous outreach programs in which they would have received information from professionals, from farmers, from everyone alike. And it's very clear that that information was put to proper use, where we are seeing the realignment of the ministry to actually ensure that land leases are being addressed and the operational issues of the farmers are being addressed as well.
No, I see Philip is looking at me because he clearly wants to interject here. I know he has his figures ready.
I do. My closest colleagues in the Senate is the Honorable Leroy Batiste and the Honorable Ravi Ratiram, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. And next to the Honorable Leroy Batiste is the Honorable Kama Mirage. And between the Honorable Kama Mirage and Ravi Ratiram, they've been talking about redeveloping cocoa. We had one long conversation about the value of Trinidad chocolate on the global and the respect that the world has for Trinidad chocolate. That's just one thing. If you interview, and I hope you get the opportunity to interview the Minister of Agriculture, because he has massive plans. And I mean, I know that the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar wants us to feed the nation. Trinidad was a net food exporter up to the 70s. What Donnie is saying is a fact. Yeah. What he's telling you is a fact that we have about 30,000 registered farmers that were left languishing. And in all that this Prime Minister accomplished in her first 6 months, she still found time to give land, to organize the leases for the Caroni farmers that have been waiting about 15 years. Also today, what happened, because when you say remove VAT from machinery, you're talking about between 30 and 50% of the cost. Yes. It's a lot of money that a farmer could redevelop, could reuse to the redevelopment of his farm. But they also, this is an important one, and I don't want us to miss this, to remove VAT from all components used explicitly in hydroponic farming and greenhouse farming. Right. I want to tell you something. Speaking as a political leader, the Progressive Empowerment Party, one of the things we did is we set up PEP farms, and we have a farm in Bamboo, and it's a hydroponic farm that grows lettuce and kale and small crops. And I'm saying this from my perspective, the ease with which we were able to get into that, and Donnie, you could tell me if I'm correct here, this should open the market for plenty of people who were timid about farming and agriculture to wet their feet here and help us with that, lowering that food bill.
So what it does, it makes the market entry more attractive. Mm-hmm. It's not cost prohibitive anymore, right? What it also does, looking at greenhouse and looking at hydroponics, these measures mitigate against something that is very serious in the agricultural industry, which is climate resilience. There's climate change, and we need to realign our ways of doing things that fall in line with, well, basically to ensure that you have continual production. Hydroponics and greenhouse production will ensure those things. One more thing that that came up in the budget that must be mentioned, when we talk about increasing exports in agricultural items by 25%, what that specifically does is that it opens up markets for local farmers. And that is one of the major things as well that farmers have been asking for. Open markets via policy. And we have not had these policies in place before. Our baseline production currently is 55% less than pre-COVID levels. So our agricultural output has not recovered since COVID. That is why our prices are about 50% higher from the same period. So food is getting more expensive. There are items that we import phenomenal amounts for that we should not be. Let me give you an example. We produce 1 liter of milk, cow's milk, per capita. So what that means, 1 liter per person per year. That is our production levels. We import 42 million US every year in cow's milk. Why should we be doing that? Can you imagine what $42 million US would do to our banking sector when you go to the bank and the bank giving you, 100 US, when you have a ticket in hand? I heard the minister speak about 3 crop areas and 1 area in animal husbandry. I would hope that at 1 acre, and I would dare guess it's on dairy production, because that is where the money is. That is the lowest hanging fruit that could create value in the offset of our food import bill. Another area we have to look at is rice. We have farmers here that could offset the rice imports by 75-80%. And it's not cost prohibitive to do that. We have farmers who could offset the use of imported wheat by doing cassava flour, plantain flour, and those sorts of things. We could offset wheat imports by 25%.
So let's bring in Dr. Murad Ali in here, because we are looking at food security as well as local production. And the fact that from what all of you are saying at this time, the budget reflects a serious commitment to that in this particular fiscal year. So Dr. Murad Ali, if you are able to hear me clearly, from a municipal level, being a former mayor of San Fernando, what role would you say the local government would play in supporting not just the agriculture sector, but even the national health sector as well?
Yes, thank you very much, Sigoni, for that question, and to your panelists, and Trinidad and Tobago. Let me say first off that let me be a little philosophical at first. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, he made it very clear when he said that let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I think it resonates with what we are talking about today, because we have kind of moved away from that philosophy, and now the motto is more like let the drugs be your medicine as opposed to the food. So at the municipal level, we have in the past tried many farmers markets, tried to promote buy local. And one of the things that you have seen in the last 10 years, persons are asking for organic foods because they have gone onto the internet and they're seeing value in these organic foods. They say that it's difficult to find. It's expensive. They're not too sure if it's organic, because I'm not too sure if we have any organic certification, like how you see those labels in the foreign products. So what I would like to suggest to the team here is that in moving forward, as we have these allocations in the budget for agriculture, and personally, I think the allocation is low, because I want to see in the next 5 years a reversal of the numbers. And let me tell you what I mean. Healthcare budget started in 2010 at $4 billion towards the public healthcare sector. It has doubled in 15 years to over $8 billion. Agriculture has pretty much remained the same, somewhere in that $1 billion figure. And if we are to be serious, and if we are to implement the measures in the budget and to promote agriculture or food security, and to ensure that we promote primary health care to reduce the incidence of cardiovascular diseases and diabetes, reduce the burden on care at our hospitals and health centers. If we are to do that, it means that healthcare spending should be coming down eventually, and agriculture should be going up. So maybe one day we could be spending $8 billion on agriculture and $1 billion on health.
Dr. Rogers, how do you feel about that?
Well,
it should be a flip.
I will respectfully disagree with one thing. Agriculture can be an income earner to the country. Aside from energy, agriculture holds the most amount of capacity to be an income earner to the country, to offset forex. So once we develop the sector properly, I don't see the need for large spends in agriculture. And another thing I'll disagree with respectfully is I think the allocation is sufficient, because we have a couple of things we have to understand here. When government changed, we heard that the ministry was understaffed by about 60%, right? Before that, we would have gone on a baseline figure of about $850 million being recurrent expenditure to the Ministry of Agriculture. So that leaves about $350 million, maybe up to $450 million, where the minister could now invest into food production and developmental plans. And I think for a first year, that is adequately sufficient, because whilst it's complex with the amount of issues you have to deal with, it is not prohibitive or complicated. It just takes a firm understanding of what is needed and where we should put the focus and resources.
So right now, one of the focus that we would have seen is that agriculture would have gotten a reasonable amount,
Yes.
though some are saying it is a very small amount, especially compared to last year's figure. What we have seen over the last few years, though, is that we have health being given this $8.214 billion allocation. So I want to bring back in Dr. Muradali here, because when it comes to the budget reflecting a willingness to move beyond emergency response and moving towards long-term infrastructure, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So it brings me back to the first point, that we have to look at the value for money. If we were spending $4 billion in health 15 years ago, we have doubled the spend in 2025. What are the markers that tells us that we are doing any better in terms of the quality of life with respect to the population? And the data suggests otherwise. The data suggests that diabetes, for example, has increased, the incidence of diabetes has increased from 7% to 13%. There are more persons now who are overweight and obese. It's almost about 80% of the population, and you heard that correct, 80% who are either overweight or obese. It means the number of cancers, cancer incidence has risen. The number of deaths, 2,000 deaths due to cancer every year, is unacceptable. These numbers have been increasing. So we have doubled the money that we are spending in healthcare. And what the end goals are in terms of our clinical endpoints, in terms of our morbidity, mortality, the things that we measure health on, we have not done any better. In fact, we're doing worse. So my contribution would be to say that I believe that the administration, they know what the information I've just said, and therefore they take a very out-of-the-box approach and spend that money in digital transformation of the healthcare sector. Gone are the days where we should have paper prescriptions and a lot of paper notes in the hospitals. Gone are the days where we have to wait very, very long times for results. Gone are the days where we have to be waiting in a casualty room for hours and hours, when we have AI systems that could help us triage our patients. So I'm hoping, I've heard it from the minister in over the past few weeks, the Minister of Health. I think he knows the healthcare sector. I think he has a very good team around him. And I think that the approach must definitely be out of the box. It can't just be about building hospitals anymore and hiring more staff. We have heard that over and over. And it has not solved the problem that I have told you about. So we really need to look at healthcare spending in the terms of, we know that there's a recurrent expenditure, goods and services. A lot of it is a supply chain that we cannot control, gloves, medication, and all of these things. But we have to look at going paperless, and we have to definitely make sure that the digital transformation of healthcare, where we bring in artificial intelligence into the clinics, into the hospitals, into the wards, that we really push that agenda for the next 3 years. and become the first AI-powered hospital in the Caribbean.
All right, thank you so much for that input there, Dr. Muradali. And we will get back to you, especially on that point that you're making, where we have artificial intelligence now coming into the mix and how that digitalization of the entire system goes beyond just what we're hearing on paper and it becomes a reality and a practicality. But before we head to a short break, I do want to get, because I know, Tobago, you've been with us for a little bit.
Sure.
Yep, I just want to get from you, what is missing from this budget from your perspective that would really empower Tobago to thrive and not just survive in the next few years?
Well, what remains the number one priority for Tobago is the completion of the autonomy project, right? It was mentioned that the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary continues to have conversation on that issue. And there's a pathway towards achieving that in short order. Because with all that we are saying and all the monies that you have, if you don't have the legislative authority to do the transformative things that you need to do on the island, then you are just reduced to a spending agency. And that has been an historical problem that we have in Tobago. The Chief Secretary mentioned in his interview with the media today that we have sent a bill to Port of Spain to deal with marine protection, the protection of the Buku Reef, and we are having problems in regulating that sector. And because we don't have lawmaking powers in Tobago to make the necessary regulation to regulate our lives, that poses a serious challenge for us to how we administrate the island. Because policy without legislation is difficult to implement. And therefore, the completion of that long outstanding self-determination project is a critical, it remains the number one priority for us in Tobago. Because a people is only free when they are governed by their own laws. And there is no excuse. This is not a favor. This is a human right issue. We have a right to make the laws that govern the island of Tobago.
All right,
And
interesting.
not Philip not supposed to make no law for Tobago.
Interesting words
And I
you
need to
have.
say that.
Interesting words you have there. Handshakes all around.
You're off me up there. You're off me up there. But
And with that, we're going to head to a fast break and come back with much more. Stay where you are as we continue to recalibrate the economy right here on TTT. welcome back. So we were just in a conversation with Dr. Navi Muradali, and we were discussing a little bit about AI having the potential to streamline diagnostics, patient records, and even pediatric care. Dr. Muradali, you're still with us, yes?
Yes.
All right. So we want to find out from you this evening a little bit more about how you see the strategic allocations in this budget, especially as it relates not just to health, but also into artificial intelligence and moving away from that paper-based system, and how that shift now towards AI integration really helps as we move forward, not just in our budget, but as a nation.
Yes. So I think the allocation that I heard in the budget, it's definitely something that the Minister of Health and his team, they can work with that budget. Because some years ago, a group of us, we did a study, and we were trying to find out how much paper stationery we spend in the public healthcare system. In other words, how much money would have been spent across all of the RHAs buying paper, stationery, toner, ink, having persons photocopy files going into these medical storage rooms. And it usually the figure globally is about 1% of the entire healthcare spend, which would work out anywhere between $50 to $70 million a year. If we were to take that $50 to $70 million per year and allocate it to the digital transformation, in other words, we develop an artificial intelligence health information management system, which is a big word just to say it's going to be patients' records. It's going to house things like your electronic blood reports, electronic prescriptions, electronic diagnostics. The patient could have access to it on their phone or wherever they are. They can be traveling, they need their medical report, they can get it in real time. You see these things as, for 10, 15, 20 years, you've seen it in Canada and the US and in other parts of the world. And we are taking so long to catch up with it. Yes, there are certain models that we use currently at some of the hospitals, but there are some challenges with those because the system has to be what we call interoperable. It means a patient who is living in San Fernando, he goes up to ARIMA, he should be able to get the notes that were based in San Fernando. He should not have to, call the doctor in San Fernando to get the notes. It should be available on his phone. So this is the issue of interoperability in the systems. So what the electronic health record does, what the artificial intelligence will do for it, is to really bring it closer to the patient and bring it closer to the doctor. We also have these things called artificial intelligence medical scribes. Sigourney, you have gone to the doctor, and sometimes the doctor is talking to you, you're talking back, and he may not even make eye contact for a few minutes because he's busy writing his notes or trying to chart the notes on a computer. We have AI medical scribes now. It's all over the place. It's something that it's a software on your phone, on your computer. It listens to the conversations. It comes up with subjective, objective assessment and a plan for you. And that note could be saved into electronic health records. It saves you and the doctor that time. Instead of just writing, he can engage with you. He could actually, listen to you in a better way. And these are some of the tools that are already here. People talk about AI as something very futuristic. And I always have to warn them that for the past 2-3 years, we have been using these things in Trinidad in private practice for companies like Heritage, where we do some work for National Energy, for some of the insurance companies, Amplia. For their employee wellness programs, we are using all of these tools already in Trinidad. And we just have to simply have the leadership and the willpower to take what is already available and invest it into the public healthcare system. And the beauty of it is we may not even have to spend a new cent, because paper and stationery, if we take that out, and that's $50 to $70 million, we now free up that same money to introduce AI technologies.
So we're talking about the ease of doing business. Mr. Rogers, is this an opportunity in the budget that may have been missed maybe in your sector?
The ease of doing business in agriculture, I would say, one, it has been addressed in a bit with regards to the separation of the ministry and the realignment, but we still need to look at farmer registration, and we need to look at the process that it takes for a farmer to get from, okay, I get into the ministry, I apply, I have my farmer's badge, and I can access the services. I am hopeful in that regard that during the budget debate, details like these would actually come out and be discussed. I mean, we understand that the actual fiscal presentation, the finer details wouldn't really be had there. But I will hope that the actual business of agriculture and the facilitation of that is discussed during the budget debate, and that could be addressed there. But it is an issue. Farmers have generally complained about waiting a year, 2 years, and those sorts of things, waiting for a farmer's card. Many times, as we're talking about artificial intelligence, many times a farmer would go to the ministry, send all the documents. Months after, you go hoping to hear there's an update, and you hear, well, we lost your file. You know, so these are the things we have to address. It will ensure that the business of agriculture goes forward. It will ensure that farmers produce and they could focus on production rather than having to be running back and forth, getting documents, not being able to access incentives while they are producing. That's a serious disincentive, you know. So definitely, and I hope that it could be addressed during the budget debate.
All right, Mr. Maharaj, can I get your take in on that, especially where you have the ease of doing business, especially for those who are micro and small and medium enterprises? How does this impact them with respect to this budget?
Well, we heard the Minister of Finance speak about it. And again, in the fullness of time, they'll roll that out. But we spend too much time going from point A to point B for simple services, whether it's starting a new business, going to the banks, going to the passport office, you know, basic things that you will need. In fact, it's now the passport office, they're not even taking appointments. So, but quite a lot of things, I mean, I was going to Chaguanas this morning from Grand Bazaar. The traffic started somewhere close to Price Plaza. That was 8 this morning. Because people coming into Port of Spain for services that they could have done online. Especially with things like customs, for example, they are not online. So that it's a welcome relief when we start to digitize some of those services.
Right. So they would have spoken to a digital transformation office, which will continue to lead efforts to modernize government services, not just with AI. They spoke about automation, smart analytics, and that continued push for paperless transactions. So, Dr. Arjun, in terms of your experience in this area with looking at investment and looking at where there is critical ICT infrastructure in this budget, did you hear all of that coming together? Is it practical?
Well, firstly, there was, in my view, an important issue raised and an important treatment that they outlined in the budget concerning making it easier to do business in TNT with respect to upgrading the Asikuda system. What the minister spoke about is actually in line with moving us much closer to developing what is known as a smart port system, where you're digitizing customs, basically. Now, of course, you're not going to digitize all of customs. There still has a human element, which is the customs officers. And at the end of the day, they still will retain a significant amount of say and authority over the clearing of goods that are imported. What essentially they're proposing to do is allow for importers to submit all their import documents digitally. As it is now, the current system only allows you to submit your documents when the vessel arrives in the country. But with the new system that they're proposing, you can submit your documents online even before the vessel has arrived. You can make your payments online as well. That will that theoretically that is supposed to significantly drop the time taken for an importer to be able to clear his cargo. One of the critical obstacles that exists not just now but for several years would be significant delays at the port, causing high rent and demurrage charges for importers. It's been hitting not just the retail sector but manufacturers as well quite significantly when they have to wait a long time to be able to get their raw materials, their equipment, their machinery, etc. cleared. Those who are food processors, there are certain instances where some of the raw materials, food items that they would import will go bad, and they can't use that batch again because of the delays at the port. So the rent and demurrage charges would compound the cost of doing business, and of course the consumer's the one that pays the price at the end of the day. With the new system, the upgrade in Asikuda, when they can make their payments online and submit all of their documents online, then that means they can be processed much faster even before the cargo gets into TNT, and with the automated system, their cargo then could be green lighted for clearance, so they get faster clearance of their imports. Now, that could help to cut down the rent and demurrage charges quite substantially if it's a smooth flow. But at the end of the day, there's still a human element of the customs body themselves. And what can potentially offset or at least reduce the benefit of this new measure that they're proposing is that if they have some customs officers that might say, okay, even though the system green lights the cargo for clearance, they may intervene and say, no, that has to be red lighted and go to the container examination section or go through the scanner. And that, of course, takes time. It takes time to get that appointment for the inspection. It takes, I think, the port in Port of Spain that scanner only operates between 8 to 4 at Point Lisa. So I think you need to get an appointment to go through the scanner, if I'm not mistaken. They have no container examination section in Point Lisa right now that's operational. So that in turn will delay the entire process significantly if it is the customs officers decides, look, I can get some overtime if it is if it is even though they've been green lighted and I intervene and I red light the cargo, then the importer might decide to take overtime instead to speed up the clearance of the clearance of his cargo, and then they have no choice but to go and take the overtime appointment, and the customs officer will benefit at the end of the day. But that means the importer, his cost of doing business goes up because he again has to now intervene and pay the overtime to the customs officer. So that could offset potentially some of the benefits that the new system, the upgrades in the Asikuda could afford. The minister, so that's what you have to keep in mind. We really need customs reform in Trinidad and Tobago, and that in itself is a cultural shift within the customs body. But the other thing is that the minister spoke about the UPI payment system. You would recall that UPI was something that was being introduced to TNT since it was discussed since last year from the Indian economy. In fact, has been introduced from India. Were introduced by India, where over 75% of their digital retail transaction is done using UPI, which is based on an app on your cell phone. Right. In fact, basically how it works is that you have the app is connected directly to your bank account. Strict.
Right.
And cyber threat. You use your at a container, so that when you scan your QR code and you have your it's either 2 or 3 factor authentication as well in order to make it even more secure. there's instant bank-to-bank settlement of the fees, of the funds. And again, it's at a very low cost. And from what the minister's saying is that they're likely to roll this out next year. So I think that is also something very positive on the digitization side that we ought to be looking forward to.
All right. So Mr. Rogers, actually, and also to Dr. Muradali, who is joining us via Zoom. I just want to get some pointers from you quickly. If there is a way for you to have redirected the funding, what sector, I know you may want to say respectively your sectors, but what sector would you prioritize? If you had just about 30 seconds or a minute just to wrap that up, what sector would you prioritize?
What we need to do is focus on crop production. And because, as I said before, our baseline output of primary production has decreased by about 50% when compared to pre-COVID levels. We need to increase crop production. We need to also look at production of items that could offset our food import bill in terms of crops, as well as, I'll make a plug for my area, for dairy, because I think we spend too much of valuable forex on that area, 42 million US thereabouts every year. And we live in the tropical climate. There is no reason why we can't increase milk production and even offset that totally. Right. So I would look at those areas. They would create most impactful value to the economy and to the country and to the sector.
All right. As you're in-house as well, Mr. Maharaj, what sector would you redirect funding to?
I would say tourism. There's a chronic shortage of forex, and Tobago is underutilized. We would have heard sometime last week a prime minister of a Caribbean country say that they had a north of 400% increase in airlift and tourist arrivals, and that significantly increased their GDP. Tobago, in my opinion, is underutilized because mainly of the airlift. I think they have good hotels, but the airlift is not there. So I would say, spend some money in tourism. It gives us the necessary foreign exchange. And that is an area, when we compare ourselves to the wider Caribbean, it's grossly underutilized and underused.
All right. And Dr. Muradali, who is joining us on Zoom as well. If you had to redirect funds, what sector? In just under a minute.
We would put is similar. We need $1 trillion. We have a lot of things. They generate millions of dollars. They like to see a must be a percent. So come with the plans, come with the ideas, and show them how we can attract tourists from all over the world here for their health needs, for their wellness needs. And it certainly is going to redound to the benefit of all of us because we're going to get more forex.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muradali, as well as Mr. Rogers and Mr. Maharaj. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You are watching Budget 2026 as we continue to recalibrate the economy. We'll be right back after a short break.
Ever taste some memory? Rice pudding as good as Granny used to make it? Or custard straight out of mommy pot? Let's make some sweet and local memories together in this new episode of Carrie's Kitchen. Wednesday, October 15th at 8 p.m. right here on TTT and TTT Live online.
Carrie's Kitchen, powered by Food Hall. Grocery made greater. Ibis, a tradition of excellence. Caribbean flavors. In the heart of every kitchen. Lotus, the confidence to create. Correga Garden Supplies. Good and natural. Indie. Spice up your life. Distributed by Edward B.B. Harry. Champion. Always a winner. Distributed by Edward B.B. Harry. Lion. The power behind our great taste traditions. Excellent Stores Limited. Live. Create. Do.
Line and Length, the #1 cricket program in the West Indies, is on TTT. Line and Length brings you up-to-date interviews, analysis, and highlights on the game in the region and internationally. Line and Length in association with Massey United Insurance on TTT.
We are rejoined by Dr. Hira and Dr. Ramkisoon, who is joining me again with Dr. Arjun. And we were just discussing a little bit about missed opportunities with this budget in terms of allocations. Dr. Hira, I want to kick things off with you as we are coming down to the final few minutes here. Were there any missed opportunities or red flags from your industry's point of view?
I would say more red flags. And of course, we have to give way for the rollout. We have to give way for the debate wrestle that is going to come in the next couple of days. But I would have ended the last segment by speaking to cybersecurity, because it's all well and good to speak about digitization and the modernization and being people-less, as some of the other speakers and panelists were discussing. But we have to pay attention to securing that whole concept and that initiative, and therefore cybersecurity and the efficacy of investment, the efficacy of doing business, the efficacy of working around the bureaucracy. I know we alluded to some stuff with Tobago. Cybersecurity plays a paramount role, and therefore I am hoping to hear, because it's a red flag for me, that cybersecurity and all of the what I'll call the architecture that supports that concept is being considered, because that is a big spend when you look at moving your country to the level of standardization and global best practices.
All right, Dr. Ramkisoon, we've heard from agriculture, we've heard from health, we've heard from digitizing the system, having that ease of doing business. What is the one thing you wish would have been included in this particular budget?
Well, there are several things. One, let me say that I would like to see the Economic Resilience Council be fleshed out, headed by perhaps Dr. Arjun, because I think that it is important that we think through all these measures. I don't know how deep we have been in terms of looking at the pros and cons of the measures we are taking, and then calibrating in some type of a model what the ultimate effects for in a development plan, the medium term framework. I think is very critical to locate this 1 year budget that is being done in a short space of time. So I think we need to look at the entire picture, and we need to make sure that these particular elements and measures that they all come together and that we are moving in a sustainable fashion, at least over the next few years.
Okay, Dr. Arjun clearly not agreeing with you that he should be the head of any kind of panel or anything like that in future. But Dr. Arjun, I want to get from you, what are some of the things that citizens should look out for or watch for in the coming months as the budget is rolled out?
Well, first of all, the Minister of Finance, as it is for every single budget, not just with this one, what the minister does is give the bare skeleton of what their plans are, given the time limit that he has. Thankfully, it wasn't a 5-hour budget that what we had last year, but he's not going to go into every single minute detail. It'll be left up to the other cabinet ministers when they give their budget presentations to now bring the muscle and the flesh onto this skeleton and give more details as to what each of their what initiatives and projects, incentives, etc. Their particular line areas then would be embarking on. So, for example, I mean, earlier you were asking about what it is we would like to see more of,
yes,
right? Or more allocations more allocations going into. I think I heard the minister, and I have to check it back, speak about nearshoring in the budget. But now I think we have a very good opportunity to take advantage of any or even create nearshoring opportunities. The reason being, and I just want to backtrack a bit here to the manufacturing sector, the non-energy manufacturing sector specifically. They have performed remarkably in this last decade. They would have grown by about 35% within the last decade. And in fact, much of their growth was seen within the last few years in the post-pandemic period. Because of after the lockdowns and when economies came out of the lockdowns, there was a surge in global levels. In fact, just first fiscal year, the sector about 12% about. More attention, I think, especially because it 40% nor nearshoring. This new tariffs 15% in China and India are two serious manufacturing hubs in Asia, more so China. And if we can attract under the special economic zones, under the umbrella of these special economic zones, of just a few of their manufacturers, because we're a small country, of course, to invest into TNT, perhaps in the Tamina Intech Park. Let's take India, for example. A manufacturer like Sun Pharma, for example, a pharmaceutical manufacturer, sets up an operation plant in Tamina Intech Park and under the special economic zone, so they benefit from 15% corporation tax, no VAT and duties on the importation of raw materials and machinery, etc. And they start manufacturing pharmaceuticals here. It doesn't even have to be that, other commodities, and they export from here to the United States. That's only a 15% tariff compared to if they were exporting from India to the US, which will incur 50% tariff.
So clearly that's where you see your recalibration should focus more, especially as we go into the next fiscal year. Gentlemen, I do want to thank you. I know that the conversation can go on much longer and for many more hours, but unfortunately, we do not have that time. So what we have discussed today has been really revealing and thought-provoking, at times very sobering for some of our panelists as well. But we have discussed the renewed focus on agriculture, as well as looking at youth empowerment, to the bold affairs as to what is happening across in Tobago and how they are moving toward a promise for recalibration and rebuilding Trinidad and Tobago. This is definitely a conversation that continues to raise concerns, however, about impact and accountability. So with that said, what is clear for the budget 2026 is that it is not just a financial statement, it is a social contract that we as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have a stake in with every single line of the budget that was presented. With that said, on behalf of all of us here at TTT, thank you so much for spending time with us. I'm Sigoni Mohammed. On behalf of everyone, this has been Budget 2026, recalibrating the economy. Do have a good night.
So when you see me, you already know what time it is. It's that time to bring you the latest coming out of the Tobago House of Assembly. This past week was very exciting and interesting, from the signing of a partnership with Freetown Collective to the excitement of Republic Day in Tobago.